Hello, Adrienne.
Hello.
Welcome to the On Point podcast.
I'm so happy to be here.
It's so exciting. Oh, I'm so glad to be reconnecting with you. And, I do your workouts on Aloe Moves and I've been to your live stream. But I met you in Rome, Italy, a few years back. That's actually 2 years now.
Oh my gosh, 2 years ago.
Yes. And I did a yoga teacher training with you there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. That was magical being in Rome. Like it all kind of feels like a dream.
Yeah, it really does. Like I've lived in Italy for a decade and it still feels like a dream. It does. Like it's just like a whole other universe.
It really is. And like, I wanted to ask, what did you, now reflecting back on yoga teacher training, the craft of teaching yoga, like what's your memory of it, or like what's your feeling about that experience?
Ooh, that's a good question, Adrienne. I'm good at promoting other people, and I can definitely say it was a life-changing experience for me. Yeah, it's just like such a beautiful memory for me. I felt like I was at home with you guys from all over the world, and we were like family, and we just got to dive into the yummy, amazing philosophy and the chakras and just the flow. And yeah, I really think that that training is just like amazing. Life without that training, what would it be? I don't know. But
well, it was very similar for us, that it was like we had been leading trainings for a while at that point. So we kind of had our training dialed in, but every single class that we would teach was so different. And in Seattle, we were meeting a lot of resistance to the type of material we were putting out there. So like, how we would teach more energetic inhabiting of your body, embodiment. We would do a lot of philosophy work, a lot of chakra exploration, and the poses, which, we would reveal together that the poses themselves are more or less irrelevant to actually experiencing the yoga. And we would teach poses and we would go over anatomy, but really it was a yoga training, and we had received just so much resistance, and like we kind of were exhausted when we got to Rome. But like the students we had in Rome, you and everyone else who was there, you all were just like, you just got it. I remember the first time we did meditation, and there was no like, I was used to convincing and trying to prove to people that energy exists here in America. And like all the students in Rome were just like, I get it. I feel it. I'm there. And we were like, I love these people. Like, and I had been so nervous because I was like, I don't know the culture. Like, I'm so American and ignorant to these different ways of being in the world. And I was so nervous to lead that training, and it turned out to be one of my favorites that we led, because the class was just amazing. We were totally family. It was so awesome.
Yeah, just the whole atmosphere and vibe, and I cannot say enough good stuff about that training. Like, it just like the yoga classes that you and Eric led, the yoga rituals, for me, it's just like my, like, really up there in my like favorite experiences ever of it, just in life and yoga, just like the way you had built up that ritual and how it was created with so much love and so much thought. You could really feel it. Like, it became a yoga whole like experience, like a doorway into, well, you know me, I'm quite
No, I'm right there with you. That's exactly what we were doing. We were creating this like portal into a space that you can experience at any time, but usually you need something to facilitate your journey into it. So I'm so glad you felt that way. That means it worked.
Yes. Yeah. You know, me being, I think you described me as a little bit of a modern day mystic. I can definitely attest that it really works.
Oh,
But,
I
you
love
know,
that.
from the mysticism, you know, like I didn't do a yoga class with you before I took the training. I gotta admit it. I'm a pretty lazy yogi. So
Mm-hmm.
I went onto the Allo platform and I've been there before, you know, taking some classes here and there, but I find it really difficult to take online yoga classes.
Totally.
Yeah, but I've done a lot of them. And I just um, have stumbled upon some bar workouts you had there.
Yes.
And I was in my living room in Norway, like, I really should take a class with her before I go to this training. And it was over Christmas. And oh my God, so much happened. We all get triggered at Christmas.
Yes.
I
Oh
think
my
I
gosh.
was, yeah, I think I was eating a lot of chocolate and not moving my butt at all.
A million
Just
people can relate to
coping,
that.
you know, and
Surviving.
yeah, I did that workout and my thighs were like shaking. I was like, this lady is amazing. and I mean, I not to like brag about myself, but I am trained professional dancer and I've done a
Mm-hmm.
lot of, you know, I associate bar more with like the ballet world because we would do like the dance world, we would do like these floor bar exercises.
Totally.
And so yeah, I was just like, yeah, she's got the moves.
Oh, I'm happy to hear that. Yeah, I feel like I would have kind of so I've for as long as I've done yoga, I've done bar, and I've really kept those two worlds separate. And a lot of people were like, if they knew my yoga side, they didn't know my bar side. And if they knew my bar side, they didn't know my yoga side. So that's crazy that you were able to experience both and kind of see the dichotomy, but also probably see the overlap of both. And the reason I wanted to keep those worlds separate is that I, in my practice and study of yoga, it was not about achieving a physical thing. And so I didn't want to blend those two because I wanted fitness to be fitness, workout to be workout, you know, like taking care of your bod to be taking care of your bod. And then yoga, it was stepping into a slipstream of spirituality and embodiment, which was a very different approach to our bodies and our life. So yeah, it was Allo was interesting because Allo had plenty of yoga teachers when they were interested in me. You know, they weren't interested in my yoga because they already had famous yoga teachers there. So when they were interested in my bar, I was like, sure, okay, you know, like bar. I had been doing bar quietly, like no one really knew me or my bar method or anything. And through Allo, like my bar performed so well on their platform that it inspired them to start to shift into fitness. So they were doing yoga, and then my bar did so well that they were like, okay, something's happening in this fitness that we need to complement yoga with and actually separate the two. And so then my bar kind of took off and I did more bar with them. And now I only do bar, but it's kind of crazy how that happened, you know?
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing to hear that. And yeah, I want to ask you more like you have such a varied background, but also like you used to run 2 yoga studios in Seattle and where you did yoga and bar teacher training. So for those, yeah, you know, my listeners on my end who maybe don't know you or I guess a lot of your followers don't really
Yeah,
maybe
don't
know
really know
all of
either.
your story.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. So let's see. I started teaching yoga in 2011 after taking a training in Chicago. And then I moved to Seattle just kind of on a whim and really wanted to pursue the yoga route, wanted to lead yoga trainings and lead yoga retreats and all those beautiful things that you see other people doing. And you're like, I want to do that, right? So I was kind of in that stage. And I learned pretty quickly that I couldn't make a living doing yoga. And especially as a new yoga teacher, like you can't do retreats right out the gate. You can't do trainings right out the gate. You don't have a following, right? You don't have people who trust you yet. So I saw this ad to teach bar, and I was like, I don't even know what bar is. I had never even taken a bar class. And I had this little interview, and the director was like, you know what, go take a bar class, and she named a franchise bar studio, go to this bar studio, see if you like it. And if you do, then you should come to our audition. I was like, okay, cool. So I took this bar class and I hated it. Because the teacher, because I was a yogi, right? And so like from yoga, I'm used to people like having their heart and their soul in it, saying inspirational things, being really involved. And the bar teacher was like picking at her nails. It was like she had a script, and I was just like, this is so boring. And like, we were like on our tiptoes and, fingers on the bar. And I was like, oh my God, like what the am I doing? So anyway, but then I actually reached out to that owner and I said, or the creative director, and I said, you know what, bar's not for me. Like, sorry for wasting your time. And she said, come to the audition anyway, because you'll be able to take my class and you might feel differently. I said, okay. So I went to the audition. So this was at Fly Bar in Seattle when they were just opening a studio. And the creative director is Cara Liotta, who is just an incredible instructor. Anyway, but I loved her class, fell in love with bar. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll start teaching bar and I'll use bar to fuel my yoga. I'll use bar as my money maker and yoga as my passion project. And it didn't take long, maybe about a year, before bar was making, just my bar classes were making more money than all of my yoga classes and my workshops and my retreats combined.
Oh, wow.
So then there was something there for me where I was like, okay, I need to keep this bar piece of me alive because I really love it. And through that process of not only making money, I just started to fall in love with how easy it was to teach. It was like in yoga, it was deep and it was a creative process and it was a constant therapeutic diving into myself to find things to share, which takes a lot of energy. And bar, I could just do fitness. I could listen to a good song, flex my butt, and get my sweat on, and it was just easy. So I was like, okay, I can balance these two. So anyway, and then in about 2015, I was at a crossroads in my life. I had left that bar studio. I had left a yoga studio I was at, and I was kind of like, what do I do with myself? And then this woman who ended up becoming my business partner had reached out to me just super randomly. She was like, hey, I signed a lease for this studio. The person who was going to open with me just backed out. I'm curious if you want to open a bar studio. And at the time I was like, oh man, like opening a bar studio, that's a big undertaking and one I didn't expect. I thought I was done with bar. And I said, and then I thought about it. I talked to Eric about it. We had tacos. I remember this meeting. We had tacos and tequila and we were dreaming it up. And he was like, you could bring something to bar that no one does. You could bring this body affirming voice and something more colorful and something more soulful than kind of the more sterile bar that's out there. And the more elitist, like Barre is very elitist in the way that it communicates its stuff. So anyway,
Yeah,
and
that
then we
was
opened the studio.
yeah, that was so on point what Eric said, you know, about you. You really bring that to Barre. And I'm just gonna say, like, I know that there is a bar culture in the US, but I've never been to the US and there's not that culture here in Norway, or I don't think it's that big in Europe at all. It's more like Pilates and yoga, of course. I've seen like the studio in Oslo. I know the lady who runs that, and she does like these California inspired workouts. She's always looking for what's next.
Yeah.
So she like does something kind of like it, but not really. And I've seen a lot of yoga studios trying to jump on the bar trend as you know a dancer, former dancer myself. I know a lot of dancers who've transitioned into teaching yoga, and some of them you know tried to do some bar classes, but it didn't really take off.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know why that is. I learned very quickly that, you know, running a bar program was a lot of work. And luckily I was in my, you know, mid-20s, so I had a lot of energy. But I had to keep, like, I quietly opened this studio and no one knew me in fitness. No one knew me in bar. No one knew me in the neighborhood we were opening in. And I was training, you know, created a method, trained teachers, you know, was like teaching classes for free as the studio was getting on its feet. And then at the same time, I wasn't even bringing any attention to that in my public, more like social media realm was all in marketing my yoga, because I was also trying to lead yoga trainings and retreats and all of that. But what I learned was that a bar program, it's really difficult to build up and sustain and keep good quality of teachers. And that's why more recently, I created my online bar teacher training program, which I'll talk about in a second, I guess. But just to wrap up this story, so so I very quietly had this studio that was going for a long time. And then we opened another studio and I turned it into a yoga and bar studio instead of just bar. And I still was just sharing my yoga side with people, even though at the same time I was leading, you know, 5-6 bar classes a week. And people just didn't really know about that in my yoga world. And fast forward to last year, 2019. Where did 2020 just like didn't count? It just like
No.
didn't exist. But we decided to sell our studios, and we kind of came to this crossroads where I realized, well, our studios were doing really well. They were successful. Classes were full, you know, and we were kind of reaching the end of we were peaking in our potential at that studio. And so I was like, you know what? I think it's time to let go of the studios. And we didn't know what was next. We had no idea what we wanted to do next, genuinely. And so we sold the studios in November. And then, of course, COVID hit in March. So we like dodged a bullet, you know, like local studios have gone under. That studio has since closed one of their locations that we sold, Bohemian. And anyway, we didn't know what we were going to do. And while we were figuring it out, we were like still so immersed in leading yoga. We had led 3 in-person yoga teacher trainings that year. We were going to lead a 500-hour. We were prepping for that. And this one day we were in Chicago, long story, but we were in Chicago and it was thunder and lightning outside. I think it was April. It was like a beautiful spring thunderstorm in the Midwest. We have them. They're gorgeous here. You know, it's just like flashes and bangs and like downpour. And we were sitting by the window just watching the storm. And I think Eric said it first because I had been thinking it and feeling it, but I didn't want to say it because I wanted him to be the one that initiated. And he said, I would be okay if we never taught yoga again. And I was like,
Wow.
me too. Like I've wanted to hear that for so long, and I've had this little whisper for years. But I had been holding on to yoga because of the experiences, that you had, and because of the experience that we've seen so many have, and because my identity was so entrenched in it. And it was what was helping us survive financially. And so like we had all these reasons to stay involved with it. But when he said that, it was like a huge weight had been lifted off of our shoulders when we were just like, wow, like we can just teach Barre and just focus on that. And that doesn't change who I am. It doesn't change like all the philosophy that I believe and I study. It doesn't shift how I see the world and how yoga has changed that. But making that leap was so huge, but also it wasn't huge. Like Barre had been there the entire time. It was always there. It was always the rock, and yoga was always the thing that was uncertain and hard to get a hold of, the thing that was hard.
The yoga world is, it's become a big world, and there's a lot of different kinds of yoga and teachers and styles and all of that. And I think yoga too has hit its peak.
Yes.
It definitely has, because this whole yoga system, it's not just the practice of yoga, it's a whole philosophy. We all know that, but or not everyone knows that.
Yeah, you're right about that. I feel like people in Europe know that more than in America.
Okay, yeah, because yoga has hit the gyms. I've taught myself in gyms, and I've been bringing, a little bit drops of philosophy, some invitation for reflection and all of that. But I think it's so difficult to teach yoga.
Yeah.
Because I want to, facilitate amazing experiences for people. But I have to meet people where they're at. And for me, since I started teaching yoga, it's been a humbling experience coming from the dance world, just like, okay, I cannot teach a fun vinyasa flow
right
in this room. Like, these people have so many issues. They cannot even do a chaturanga, not even, not even in this lifetime.
Yes.
It's just like, what am I going to do? And for me, being a super flexible person, I find it ironic that I've spent so many years of my life, I'm an actress as well. So I've been hustling that on the side and, taking jobs here and there and teaching gigs and whatnot. But then I'm like over there, like trying to stretch people out all the time. I'm like, I don't even need all this stretching.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
It's
well, how do you feel? I definitely want to talk about that stretching and part of the reason, some of the issues I see in the yoga industry as a whole. But how do you feel like with, that feeling that yoga has peaked, and like watching me as your teacher, me and Eric as your teachers step away from yoga? Like what was that? What was that like?
I feel we're on the same page. Like, I was not surprised, maybe because I'm a little bit psychic,
Yeah.
Not just a little bit, a lot.
Yeah. You're like, I saw this years ago.
Yeah. I'm very in tune. My intuition is on point.
Yes.
I could see a lot of things that were going to happen. And I was just like, from the first moment I took your class, I'm like, she's amazing. She's a star. She should be teaching more Barre. But of course, I absolutely adore your yoga teacher training and your style and you guys' like work with the ritual. But I think that is a thing that needs to be experienced in person.
Yes.
This cannot be recreated in this time space thing.
Yes.
And also, I'm like not, I was not surprised, like I said, but also I feel, as I don't know, you can speak on yoga in the US, but still, like if you're teaching in gyms, you have to meet people where they're at,
right.
Not pushing too much philosophy, even though, yeah, all of that. There's a lot, to it, but a lot of people think it's just like stretching, and a lot of people come to yoga even, they approach maybe more power style of yoga, like Ashtanga, and they come like for the workout or for the I've heard so many stories about like, yeah, I saw that Madonna was doing yoga and I wanted her like arms.
That's totally why people do it.
Yeah.
That's absolutely, yeah. And there's this gap. I find that so there's this entry level place of where our students are entering yoga, and they're entering, and we probably entered from that place too. So remembering that we were there, we have this like expectation and this perception of what yoga is. And usually that perception is that it's about flexibility, and you do some like circus tricks, you do some arm balances and some handstands. And then there's this gap between the student and the instructor. And like the more an instructor starts to reveal all of the different layers of what we call yoga, the further the instructor gets away from the student in their expectations for the room. So I hear exactly what you're saying of like, you kind of have to forget all of these amazing things that you learned to actually meet the student where they are, and just meeting them with like, hey, let's actually just think of our bodies in a different way. Like maybe that's the goal. Like maybe we can get a little bit closer to being here for a reason that's not to get Madonna's arms, and that process is kind of exhausting.
It really is. And yeah, I've seen you talk about this too, but just like, it's exhausting holding space for people. We all have our traumas. I can, put my hand up. I have a lot of them. Like, hello.
Got a lot working through it.
Yeah. So, it's just like, it is a lot. And like, where do we even begin?
Yeah. Where do we even begin?
And I'm just like, with yoga, it's just, I've taught a lot of beginners, and I see people coming, and, I'm here because I want to become more flexible. And I'm like, not to like, how do you say it? Not to disappoint you, but I can't not guarantee you that you will ever touch your toes. Yes. Like, I cannot promise you anything. And I see a lot of yoga teachers do this, you just have to practice and practice and it will come. Like,
yeah. And that's I think the big facade that was really troubling to me about being in the yoga industry. And when I said I met resistance, leading our trainings, this was part of the resistance that I met, because people wanted to hear the same narrative that yoga instructors have been perpetuating for a long time, which is that like, if you put your head, your foot behind your head, and if you stand on your hands for hours on end, like, it's healthy, it's spiritual, it's nourishing. And of course, that's what I believed as well when I undertook the journey of becoming a yoga teacher. But as I, studied the history of yoga, studied the anatomy of yoga, paid attention to all of the injuries that would crop up in teachers and in students and whatnot, and listen to physical therapists and listen to experts who talk about the body and functionality. What I learned is that it's actually very harmful to do these practices every single day, like these practices being intense forward folding, deep hip opening, deep shoulder opening. And so it was hard for me to try to articulate as a teacher how to create stability while also inviting in healthy stretch, because people didn't want to hear that. They wanted to hear, I get my foot behind my head and I take an Instagram photo, and now I'm a yogi. Or they wanted to hear, I do a handstand in the middle of the room and now I'm a yogi. They didn't want to hear, hey, like that might not only not be possible in your body, but it might lead to intense injury that you have to navigate for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So I want to speak just a little bit to that overstretching that I tend to talk about when I'm talking about my bar. So when you think about a joint capsule, like your shoulder or your hip, because these are ones that we use so frequently, you can think about it like it's like a bunch of muscles interwoven to hold that joint in place, right? So there's like fascia, there's muscles, there's tendons, there's ligaments, all just holding it in place. And the job of that area is to hold the joint in place. So when we stretch it and stretch it and stretch it and stretch it and stretch it, we begin to stretch not only the fascia and the muscle, but we start to stretch our tendons and our ligaments. And tendons and ligaments are, as we taught you guys in our yoga teacher training, are not, what is the word? They're not resilient. So when they stretch, they don't go back. Whereas a muscle will stretch and it'll come back. Or fascia will stretch and come back. But your connective tissue, what connects your bone to your bone or your muscle to your bone, that does not go back, which means that stretching and stretching and stretching and stretching and stretching starts to destabilize the joint. So if you think about your shoulder being in this socket, as you're moving your arm, right, it's connected. Now imagine you loosen that up, and you loosen it up in a permanent way, a way that you can't reverse, right? Now there's more space between your bone and your hip or your socket, your shoulder socket, and the bones of your shoulder socket. So there's more movement. And because there's more movement, there's more friction and more chance of injury, right? Because now this bone isn't held where it was. It's now loose. It's now volatile, right? And so it might create impingements, or it might create dislocations, or we've seen a lot in the yoga industry of like the sacs of fluid that, stabilize and create a cushion for your joint that bursts, right? Because there's a lot of friction. So that bone is now hitting that instead of using it as a cushion in relation to the hole. So I don't want to like people to walk away and think doing yoga is bad, because that's not the message here. It's more that when we believe the idea that stretching and stretching and stretching and stretching, splits, foot behind our head, take my arm to the opposite side of my body. Like when we believe that that's healthy and we do it every single day, we're like kind of asking for injury to happen, and we don't know it because our teachers are saying it's healthy, it's good for you, it's releasing your traumas, it's opening your heart. And you're like,
yeah, that is in the name of yoga, but it's we got a little anatomy lecture there in the middle of this podcast. Thank you for that. But it's so important that people know this, because I think from my experience, having studied dance, I think I have a very interesting viewpoint, because there's a lot of overstretching.
Oh yes,
a lot of dancers and gymnasts do this for years and years, and I myself would, this was not on my end, but I did extreme back bends for years, like at 9 a.m. and every day. And the more extreme than, you see in yoga. And I was just thinking, this is not good. I had to do the movement because everybody was doing it. I really learned a lot from my experience with other teachers as well, just like with their hip injuries, like you see now in yoga.
You see the teachers, getting hip injuries.
All the time, just like, they couldn't even sit down and they had to walk around. And I was just like, this is not normal. They usually retire at like 30 years old. And I'm like, I am not going to end up like that.
Yes.
So there's a lot of reasons why I moved away from the whole dance world. But yeah, I just look back and I was completely crazy. Like I was brainwashed. Yeah. I used to go to sleep with my foot behind my head almost. Like I would stretch and stretch and stretch just to like, pleasing my teacher, trying to get her approval of me,
Yes.
So I completely abandoned myself. And then I got into the yoga and the meditation again. And I turned to that. And I had a lot of, confirmations coming from outside, like, oh my God, you're so flexible. Like, oh my gosh, you can do these amazing back bends. And I was like, well, yeah, but so what? Like,
right?
It's not really anything special, but because people, were giving me attention on this, I was like, okay, so I need to continue to do this.
Yeah.
Like I got this message, like you have this body, you need to use it. And that is like, that's something completely wrong with that.
Yeah. And how, I'm curious so are you still like hyper flexible then from all that stretching, or how has it impacted you?
Yeah, I don't think I'm because I was always, at the back of my mind, I'm not doing the oversplit stretching. I'm not going into that. And I try to strengthen myself. I was overworking my muscles a lot. So there were years where I didn't really work out, hitting burnout and all of that, and trying to rebuild my body and doing other types of exercise. Like I would run and I would, try to do some reps here and there. I had not yet discovered barre, but for me, I'm like, I feel like we're on the same page. Like seeing all of this, I really wanted to prevent injuries and have a sustainable practice, because I've overstretched, not on purpose, because I believed it was good. Like I did office stretches and I taught a lot of yoga at times, and I would really get like this injury in my shoulder. Like I've heard you talked about yours, and I remember this in the teacher training, like my body was just really suffering, like my shoulder. And I was just like, oh, I cannot do this. But I was, that whole other level of like, I don't care if I don't do all the poses. I don't care. I know it's not about that. And having done another yoga teacher training where they heavily emphasize, headstands, and yes, I used to stand on my head, but I don't promote that at all.
Right. Yeah.
That is really, I just gotta put it in there. It can be really, really dangerous.
It really can. It really can. And I think that's kind of like hopefully the awakening. It's been the awakening I've been waiting for to happen in the yoga world. But I really want to emphasize that word that you said, like, the traditional way of teaching. And when we sometimes forget that what we call yoga and even Pilates and a lot of our fitness modalities, dance, barre, barre is derived from dance. It all comes from a very, a style of instruction that is dominating, that pulls the student out of their body and their connection to it, that is ego driven, and we forget that our movement practices today and traditional yoga, especially if you're speaking about Ashtanga, comes directly from that style of teaching. And I hope that, it seems like in the past 5 years, a lot of yoga has been fused with thoughts, self-help and therapy and somatic therapy. And hopefully humans are realizing, like you're realizing, that that is not the way to be in the world. Like, we're starting to understand that we are autonomous. We are in control of this physical thing we call a body. And as an instructor, we have to challenge ourselves to put the power in the hands of the student and invite them to experience things, not because it's good or bad, but because it brings aliveness and embodiment, right? And so that was kind of like an awakening for me, and part of the reason that I decided to move away from yoga. I think the thing that's hard, the one thing that changes the conversation about yoga entirely, is the word yoga. So when we label something as yoga, it suddenly falls into this place where there's a lot of expectations, there's a lot of red tape, there's a lot of righteousness, there's a lot of cultural appropriation, there's a lot that goes into it. But when we take away that word entirely and we say, we're doing a flowing movement for energetic healing, then it becomes this liberation. It becomes this space that we can actually nourish, and we can actually get at what our intention is. Or if we're like just clear and say, like, this is a circus arts practice of arm balancing and handstands. This is a contortionist practice of deep back bends and of hip opening. If we say that and we don't put the yoga label on it, then it just makes everything more clear. And I don't know, my prediction for the yoga industry is that's the direction it's going to go. Is that like people are going to just get more clear about what they're trying to provide, and they'll move in that way.
Yeah, because I love the fact that you, what you spoke about earlier, like separating, a little bit the exercise from yoga, because it's been infused into the yoga, because you cannot only do stretches, you gotta, to do all of these advanced asanas, you have to, strengthen your core, you have to strengthen a lot of muscles in your body. So yes, I've done these types of yoga classes, but that's the thing, the label yoga, because we know this is a philosophy, an embodiment, and a way of life. And once you awaken to this, your life is yoga. You don't have to go to yoga.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. The poses, the breath, everything is just a technique into an experience of being. It's a portal into an experience of being. And you can, when you have that experience of being so readily accessible to you, you don't have to do a warrior two to get there. You don't have to sit down and do the pranayama to get there. But not to say those practices are obsolete, because I think those are great practices to pull us back into the experience.
Yes.
But yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really want to move into this whole like body, positivity, or just like, I don't know what you call it, but this embodiment and this like in fitness and bar and even in yoga. I mean, like we touched upon, like coming to yoga for the yoga bod. Like I had in a gym where I taught, like the owner, she was just like, oh, you kind of look good for just doing yoga.
Yeah, there's that too. There's that in gym culture, huh?
Yeah. And I was just like, yeah, I do something else too. But, it's just like all of these outer things, like, it doesn't matter what you look like. Like, can we get over this thing
Yeah. Can we
already?
get over it? Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of money behind, there's a lot of money that people make off of making others feel inferior. Like there's so much money in that. And I think we're kind of in this radical space where we're starting to realize that we don't fall for it anymore. And it's getting bigger. Like I'm noticing more and more people refusing to believe the lies they're being told about themselves, refusing to adhere to certain body standards or expectations. So that's pretty exciting. And I feel like that's something that I'm passionate about bringing to the bar world. And, I'm still very immersed in healing and immersed in positivity and in all these amazing things that I gathered from the yoga world, but I bring that into my bar classes, and I don't do it explicitly in the way that you would do in yoga. I do it more implicitly, where the language I use, the way I represent myself and things like that serve as a way of being that hopefully is different for people who are coming into bar. And then also as an instructor, like leading trainings and whatnot, as an instructor, it kind of takes the pressure off a bit to like know all these things about history and energetic anatomy and trauma and therapy and like all these crazy things that yoga instructors have imposed upon themselves that they have to be. In bar, we're just more honest about who we are. We're not pretending that we know these things that we don't know. And we're instead trying to understand and be better and be agents of change. But we're not under the pressure that like a yoga instructor is, which I really love. And it's just very refreshing to be able to teach it. It feels much better to teach that than to teach yoga right now. So that was part of my reason for just like, I'm just going to step away from yoga for a while. I can't say I will never return to it or never return to teaching something similar to it, but I'm really vibing with the bar. Bar is like medicine for me right now. It's fun, easy, light, feels good, you know.
It feels amazing. And even me, like in lockdown, I was just like so happy that I had just like found you and your workouts, because I'm pretty picky, like a lot of people are. I've noticed like some comments here and there, and I'm like, oh, you really have to vibe with an instructor. And I mean, like your yoga voice and your style of teaching and all of that. I'm like, at most people, I get pretty annoyed really, really quickly. Like, I don't want to do, this workout. It's so hard. It's hard already. Like, I need someone like gentle and sweet just to push me through it. And, starting out with just like a 10-minute workout, if you're feeling really lazy, like that can change your whole vibe and whole day. But just like your style and just like it feels so empowering and you feel so strong. Like for me, that's being super flexible. I don't want to feed into that. I want to strengthen my body and just feel good.
Yes, especially for dancers and for yogis. Like bar is just, it's kind of like the medicine that we need from years of overstretching. Yeah. And also, like, as we know from our yoga studies, whatever we do to our bodies impacts our energetic layers, right? And it impacts us on a way that we might not be able to articulate, but we can certainly feel. And Barre, especially, I also really like it because Barre is geared towards people who identify as female, and where females have their strength is in their legs and in their hips, where males have a lot of their strength, people who identify as male. So these are very generic terms to point out this binary, but males have a lot of upper body strength, right? So yoga is geared towards a male's body, arm balances, handstands, things like that. And so Barre is really the opposite of that. Like, we focus a lot on leg, butt, core, right? And arms are kind of like a cherry on top. So it really helps. Like, it goes so good with yoga, which is why I, added the yoga and Barre studio together, and why I think a lot of yoga studios want to add it. But anyway, energetically, our legs and our hips, our legs are our root, our foundation, our sense of security, power, strength, right? Like, that's all in our legs. So when we're pushing a lot of energy through our legs and we're building up strength in our legs, we're also building up this energetic aspect of ourselves. And our hips, as we know, are our sense of going with the flow, our passion, our ability to have fun, to relax, to receive, our ability to connect intimately, to have a stronger sense of who we are in relation to the whole. It's like that water element. And so when we're strengthening our hips, we're putting energy into our hips, we're thinking about our hips, we're moving our hips maybe in ways we might not have done, we're lighting up these energetic aspects of ourselves. And these are the same aspects that we really diminish in the standard Ashtanga practice. We're like stretching these out, we're lifting them in the air and emphasizing, energy in our upper body instead of our lower body. So anyway, so there's all sorts of benefits. That's probably why you feel so good after doing, doing a Barre class.
Yeah. Like you said, in yoga, you can maybe, expand and open your horizon and just like, oh, but you got to be rooted.
Yes. Or you go off the deep end. You got to get rooted.
Yeah, definitely. You cannot just like live up there in the ethers already.
Totally. And I think that's another reason why Barre feels so good right now in the state of the world today. So, if this interview lives a long time, so we're in the year 2021 and we've had such a tumultuous year as a world. And having something that is grounding and practical and tangible feels really balancing.
Yeah, definitely on point. Like, that is what I've been looking for. This, like you said, it's been my medicine, and Barre has definitely been one of the things that has gotten me through 2020. That is for sure.
Me too. Barre has been incredible.
Yeah.
So
tell us more about like your Barre teacher training.
Yeah. So right now there's a few places you can find me. I'm on Allo Moves for classes. That's where all my on-demand classes are. And then I do a weekly live stream class that people can attend live or catch the replay. And then where I really love to spend my time and energy is in my online Barre teacher training program. And we designed this program when studios were shutting down and we couldn't lead this program in person. And we envisioned it to be a program that could sustain Barre programs at studios. Like, that was our original vision, because it's very difficult to train instructors, to recruit instructors, to train instructors, to keep them doing good, and to create a network amongst your Barre teachers. So we were like, we could do all that, with this online course. And so anyway, like, all this course lived in my head, and Eric was like, let's put it on paper. So we wrote a manual and we recorded the whole thing. And it's the same, it's enhanced, but it was the method I used to open my studios, and Barre was the thing that made money for my studios. So anyway, we wanted to share that with people because we were like, we just have it, you know, it's in my head. Like, we have the skills, we have the ability. And now we have trained over 100 instructors online so far. And what's been really impressive and amazing is that these instructors their quality of teaching is better upon graduation, is better than my in-person programs.
Wow.
And I know I was so, surprised by that, because usually someone would have to graduate and then they'd still need a lot of practice before they got to the point of, like, I'm thinking, oh, you're good, you've nailed it, right? But I think it's because it's online. People can go back to the lectures, they can revisit it, they can practice, they can do it at their own pace, so that they can just keep going and going and going until they feel comfortable and then share their teaching, as opposed to trying to squeeze it all in a week or squeeze it all in like 2 or 3 weekends and then you teach, right? So it's really been surprising at how effective it's been, and how many doors it's opened. We're like so excited for the economy to open back up, because these are great teachers and I can't wait for them to teach in their communities around the world. We have every continent represented besides Antarctica. So it's pretty cool.
That's amazing. Oh my God. Yeah, it's just how, like, without this year and these challenges, you probably wouldn't be where you are right now.
You're absolutely right about that. You are absolutely right. Like, we just feel very lucky that we get to share it in this way, and that we're serving people ultimately. If people want to share this type of work with their communities, now they can. They don't have to live in a big city. They don't have to be close to someone who is a famous barre teacher. They can just do it online and have the same quality and the same teaching as these really high quality franchises and things like that. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, like, well, we are lucky to be experiencing this. So you've been hustling, and hustling and hustling. I know that, like, so much work has been put into this. Like, you guys over deliver on everything.
I blame Eric. He's definitely like I have the ideas and then he has the follow through, and he's the one that always makes it even better. I'm like, we could just record it on our phones and then look at this interview setup. He has lighting, he has professional cameras. He just does things over the top. But I know we just do everything kind of extra. And
I love that. If you're gonna get noticed, you gotta put in the love.
So true. And I think people don't understand that. Like, so it's so funny. People will reach out to me and they'll say, have you ever taught in person before? And I was like, oh, sweetheart, like, this teaching journey has been a 10-year process. This online, I've been teaching online since 2015. So it wasn't like I just, it wasn't like it all just happened all of a sudden, even though the shutdown definitely accelerated the direction we were going. It happened slowly over the course of time, and to your point, with a lot of work and intention and effort. But we also just feel really lucky that we have people who are interested in our work and who enjoy our work, like, that's amazing. Yeah, it's great when people like it.
Yeah, definitely is.
Oh yeah, Barre Clips. Barre Clips is my teacher training. So I just created an Instagram for that, specific for instructors or people interested in training, called Barre Clips. And I also have my Barre with Adrienne Instagram handle. And if anyone's on Insta, like, that's where I engage. That's where I am. I'm not really on the other social platforms. So that's where everyone can find me if they're interested in joining.
Of course, I'll leave all your links below. But yeah, I just want to ask you about like your personal self-care rituals, like other than bar, like
Yeah. Yes. Oh, so many. I feel like this COVID era has really helped me. It grounded me. Like I was so spread thin and doing too much, like running studios, running yoga, running bar. And now it's just bar. And what that's enabled me to do is create some really nice self-care routines. So I just want to put that out there because I haven't always been like this and I haven't always tended to myself, and it's a new thing for me that I enjoy. But the first thing that I think is really important for my own self-care is, and I know this is inaccessible to a lot of people, but is sleeping in.
I love
Sleeping
that.
in, because I spent so many years of my life like really forcing my body to wake up at an unnatural rhythm. And as I'm getting older, I am waking up earlier naturally, but I love that I don't have to have an alarm, and that's a big part of my self-care. So getting enough sleep, whatever that means for people, has really helped me. The other thing is like I stopped spending money on my hair and I started spending money on my face. And maybe that's because I'm in my mid 30s and I'm starting to show my age. And I think aging women are beautiful. So I don't want to say that I'm anti-aging in any way, but like I've never taken care of my skin, and this is a new practice for me. So in the mornings, what I do is I have this kind of like hydrating mist, and I mist my face and I do a jade roller along my face, and it just kind of like gives me this nice lifted and hydrated feeling. And then every night I just really tend to my face. I massage it. I put in this mask. It's like a mask you can sleep in. I can send you the link, but Youth to the People's Dream Mask is like so glorious. And so I use that every single night. And then I've, invested in getting my eyebrows done. And when the economy's open, I invest in getting facials. So that's been really fun self-care.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, yeah. I'm so curious because I always get inspired and I get new insight from just like everyone I talk to. And yeah, I love doing that, but I can feel myself like slipping back and just like not taking that time from me. And this is like my yoga too. I should just like write it on my mirror, just like remember your.
Yes.
I said this in a podcast with a face yoga instructor. And I
Nice.
called it goddess time.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, goddess time. I mean, it's kind of a shame that like I'm just now paying attention to it, because I feel like I'm at my hottest. I'm the most hot I've ever been, but like I'm not seeing anyone besides my husband, you know? And
But
so
we're
like
all seeing you.
yeah. I mean, I'm on camera, so that helps,
You're on
that I get
camera a lot. You're out there in the ethers. Like, don't worry, we're all looking
yeah.
at you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm like at the peaking point before I start to turn, my hair's turning gray, and which like I love a wise woman. So I want to be one of those old wise women with wrinkly face and like a whole head of silver hair that just gives no fucks and says what she feels. Like I can't wait to be that woman.
Yeah.
But as far
But
as
not
like
yet. Like not
but not yet. Not yet, but right now I'm like focusing on being hot.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
being hot for like how I feel hot, not necessarily what other people say. But so it's been fun.
Yeah, this is for me to like out of all these adversities and of all these challenges, I pushed myself to do other stuff and just like, yes, of course, if you're going through a hard time, like I feel you. And, but for me, I'm like, I was so ready to go out into the world when COVID hit. So I was just like, damn it. But I'm not going to let that. What? Yeah.
It's like you missed it. It was like, damn it.
Yeah. So I'm like, I'm going to just glow up this year. Just like, I'm going to spend all that energy into me. And yeah, the thing I was thinking about before is just like, Rome is not built in a day. And that's why I love podcasts, because, I get to dive into your story, because I know that you've been teaching for a really long time. And, when nothing just, if it blows up, it goes away really quickly, So you've been building and building and building, and people don't see what's underneath the iceberg,
Yes, you're so right about that. Like slow and steady
wins the race.
Wins the race. So agree.
Yes. But like when you're climbing up that hill, like who and what inspires you?
Oh, yeah. I love that. Who or what inspires me? There's so much I'm inspired by. So much. I'm trying to narrow it down and find like something tangible, because I'm actually not, for better or for worse, like it's hard for me to find a role model in the fitness industry because of all the reasons we talked about, and in the yoga industry. So it's not like I follow the footsteps of these type of people, but I do pay attention to how they're engaging in the world and how I can use what they're doing to lead a positive impact. So anyway, the people I really are inspired by are people who are making change on a grand scale, and people like Stacey Abrams here in the US. She mobilized a grassroots coalition pretty much that enabled millions of Black people to be able to vote. And in the southern states, our southern states here in the US have, the largest populations of Black people, and yet they're the most conservative. They have historically voted for a conservative president who doesn't represent the actual needs of these Black folks. And so anyway, Stacey she just did all of this work to just open the doorways for Black people to vote, educate Black people about voting. And she flipped the state of Georgia from red to blue. And it, like, what that did for me, it was just like, oh my gosh, this person is changing history, like in a really big way. And yet she didn't do it flamboyantly. She didn't do it by going on Instagram and showing herself in a cute outfit, right? She did it by like having conversations, by making small moves at a micro level and allowing that to slowly percolate up. So that's how I think about me being in the fitness world, is like, I make these, teacher by teacher, we educate about culture, about body shaming, about the body, about holistic movement, about being leaders, and like person by person, we're slowly shifting this tide of the direction we're headed. And before we know it, it's just, those people teach more people, and those people teach more people, and it just ripples out and becomes the new way and the normal way of being in the fitness world. So yeah, I'd say right now, Stacey is Stacey is the one I keep coming back to.
I love that. Just like a pioneer, like paving the way. I think that this work of, you could say like being a fitness instructor or teaching barre, but I feel like this is such a great vocation.
Yeah.
I've been like looking at it as like making women feel so empowered and good about themselves. Like, what bigger mission? Like, I know there's a lot of different ways we can change the world, but we gotta see things from different perspectives. Like for me, this is just like, whoa.
Yeah, you're so right about that. And like, if I can dabble in the recognition sutra for a second, when there's a recognition sutra that essentially says like, the core, it's from the core from which everything else responds. And so if we think about who we are as people, we are the core of our networks. Anyone who's impacted by us, touched by us, we interact with, we are sending a ripple effect into their being, just by our presence, our energy, and our beliefs. So just by impacting one person's beliefs about themselves and about the world, for a more empowering way, it's really sending a big impact. It's like the microcosm impacting the macro, right? So yeah, you're so right about that. And also, like, I think something that our generation has discovered is that you don't, like, the traditional ways of being in the world are boring.
Yeah.
And like, there are other ways. You can do something like teaching fitness or teaching yoga and really love what you do and love the challenges of what you do. And it will not look like the lawyers and doctors and accountants and, whatever other engineering path that colleges say that you have to go on. You can do this, and you can make a living, and you can enjoy your life, and you can change the lives around you. So I'm so glad you said that. I very much agree.
Yeah, who would have known? Like, I know you have a totally different background, and you could just briefly say it yourself, so I'm not messing up the
Yes,
the
I was in
words.
insurance. I was working in insurance. I was working, went to college, studied economics, university in Europe, they call it, went to university and studied economics. And I could have gone down that route, but there was a moment when I was in my gray cubicle that I was like, this is it? Like, like this is what everyone was talking about? No,
it's not for me. Definitely not for me. Like, I would die slowly staring into, the gray wall.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. So definitely, like, this life experience, it's so short, and sometimes we need to do have the boring jobs. That's part of it. But
you're right
like,
about that.
Like, I really wanted to emphasize this because it's not easy. The back to the Rome wasn't built in a day thing again. It's just like, you can pave a way, but it's gonna require a lot of grit and stamina, which we work on in Barre.
Yes, it does. And also there's, like, I think it's important to recognize within yourself what are the environments that you thrive the most in. Some people, I think you and I really thrive in, like, very multifaceted, several dimension, like, gray areas. Like, we really thrive in that type of environment. Other people do thrive more in, following someone else's vision, or, just doing some work that doesn't require a lot of creative parts of themselves. They can just go to work, get it done, get paid, and go home. So I don't want to, like, say that my style of being in the world is any better. But anyway, yeah. So
Just saying that there's another way, and if that path for you, like being an engineer, if it's your path, that's great. But the thing you said, it's we're all supposed to fit into that mold, and that makes it really hard to break free from that. So I think that's what the whole yoga, philosophy and all that has given us, empowered us to just, like, okay, we can live another way. We can be free, to be who we truly are, and bring what we're truly here to do.
Totally. Absolutely agree.
And I just love all of your offerings. So thank you.
Thank you
and Eric for following that inner voice and just, like, trusting that the universe would serve you up with a great global community.
Oh my gosh. I would say we weren't trusting it at the beginning. It was more like, I hope people sign up. Like, I have to pull this money out of my retirement account so that I can survive. It was pretty tough getting started. But
yeah, but you did it. You pulled that money out. That's what I'm talking about. And then the universe sees that.
And I'm grateful for you and what you've been able to do with your time and connecting people online and the On Point podcast, and your humor and your wit and your mysticism all fused together has been just such a joy to experience.
Yeah, it's my dharma apparently. Yeah, but I just at the end, I'm just going to just like ask you briefly, because I've done your like challenge, and I'm like, read the studies. It's good to brag about yourself, workout wise online, just for accountability.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
And I noticed this, like after the challenge, I was like, yeah, now I slipped off again. But do you have any like little tips at the end, like for creating some consistency with your practice or working out?
Sure. Yes, because I also have been working on creating consistency for myself. And actually this month I'm trying to work out every day, even if it's only 10 minutes. So I'm trying to build that consistency too. So I'm right with you. So there's a couple ways that you can do it that have worked for me. One is just always having a dedicated space. It's kind of hard probably when you're in a little apartment, but even if it's just a mat laid out, like having your space already set up, always set up, makes it super easy for you to just jump in. You don't have to like gather anything. You don't have to, do anything like that. So that's helped. The other thing is it's easiest to start or to stay consistent when you tag it on to something you already consistently do. So let's say in the morning, you brush your teeth every time that you wake up. Maybe you brush your teeth and then you say, okay, 10 minutes of movement. That's it. 10 minutes. I'm going to get on my mat and move for 10 minutes. And then you have that kind of like set in, and it starts to become a routine. And then the final thing, which I already kind of mentioned, is like, tell yourself you only have to do 10 minutes. And, and it can be any type of movement. So let's say it's a really, really low day. Like maybe it's a slow, yoga e-business, or maybe you're like, okay, let me just like do a booty workout where I'm laying down. Like that feels good. But after that 10 minutes, you're more likely to be ready to keep moving. So if you just tell yourself 10 minutes, then you kind of trick yourself into actually doing it.
Yeah, that is a good point, because that's how I started. I was just like, I'm just going to do 10 minutes.
Yes.
And then it got into 20.
Yes.
And those were really hard, but it's just like, okay, it's just 20 minutes. You're going to do this. Like, it's really hard. And Adrienne is really pushing you. And, I'm dying. But it's just 20 minutes. Because when I'm online, I got to admit, I go and check the time. Like,
yes.
How many minutes is left? And if it's just, 5 or 3, you can do it. You can push through. And when I did your challenge, I didn't know, the latest series.
Yes, that's a
that
really
it was 40 minutes.
Tricked you. Ha ha ha.
But that was good, because when I went back to the 20 minutes, I was like, done already? I want to do another one.
Exactly.
So that's a good pro tip. So thank you so much for being
welcome.
Personal trainer online. Thank you. And also, like, my one of my great inspirations. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for making the space for me to talk about all the things.
Oh, I love you.
Love you. Mwah.